don't fear being a baby bat, being awkward and underinformed and new at this. That's the whole goddamn point of it, isn't it? You're the ones we want at our clubs and gigs and parties. Your eyes are fresh and sparkling, your still developing brain is full of magic and everything is new to you. That's why, if you ever meet an elder goth who isn't a jumped-up lecturing windbag, they will want you at their club, at their party. They won't grill you on goth bands or sneer at your imperfect deathhawk. They'll snatch you up and kidnap you and never ever let you go. Because all we want, all we fucking want from goth clubs now, is young people with absinthe, poetry and fire in their veins, music and magic and amphetamines spinning through their brain cells. You'd find your place, then you'd find your tribe, and the scene would blossom in greater dark beauty than ever before. Listen, this is how it was in the year 2000. Hello and welcome back to another story time, you wonderful, wonderful people. I apologise for my sudden strange shift into editing mode, but there was so much stuff I forgot to say on the beginning of this video. But the first thing I wanted to say was just a huge, huge thank you to you guys for how positive and wonderful you were about the last chapter of this project. You don't need to see the last chapter to understand this one. It was a standalone chapter. I will link it below though if you want to go see it. But you were so positive about it that it has really cemented my desire to keep going with this project and to keep writing out my memories and storytelling them to you, and I'm enjoying it so much. However, there is some really rubbish news. YouTube has been on a gigantic demonetization spree of my channel. Really breaks my heart because this isn't just me having a rant. Like, I don't mind slicing out my overly too many F words in a rant, but when it's writing and I've spent so much time putting the words down and trying to get them right and trying to make them feel authentic and make them feel like my voice, and then I've had to go in and just slice my literature to pieces because YouTube has silly rules. As I say, you are allowed to say F words so long as they're not in the beginning of your video, but they don't care about that. That's what they say, that's not what they do. So the only thing I can think to do is to absolutely drive myself into the ground by double editing every video that is either literary or that I consider important and splitting it into two videos. So there will be an uncensored version that is the way that I want it to be, that is legitimate and genuine and raw and is how it should sound. And then there's going to be the version that is YouTube friendly. So when it comes to the uncensored versions, I'm going to put those up on Patreon so you guys will get to hear these story times as they ought to be with all the words in them. And if you're on YouTube, I'm sorry is all I can say. There's nothing I can do about this. Like, I can't, it's too heartbreaking editing videos and writing content and all of this and then seeing this is what you ought to be getting. Here's your peanuts, all because you said an F word. I can't. However, if you do want to see the uncensored versions, being a patron on my Patreon only costs $2 a month, plus a little bit of sales tax, which varies in depending on your country. They will tell you when you sign up what it's going to be, but it's basically $2 a month. So if you're willing to do that, you will have all the uncensored story times that I'm going to be doing. Also, there are going to be some of these story times that come in pairs. Like, it's, you know, sometimes a chapter has a little bit of a cliffhanger at the end, and it's a pair. So when that happens, I'm going to upload both of the videos at the same time to Patreon, and those people will be able to binge watch uncensored. Whereas the YouTube people, you will get the first half of the chapter, and then you'll get the cliffhanger, and you'll have to wait about 2 or 3 days until you get the next piece, and it'll be censored. So there will be some pretty hefty benefits to becoming a wonderful Patreon person, and I do want to say a huge, huge thank you to the people who have gone over to Patreon recently. Thank you so much. Having a reason, you guys as a reason to do this, even though this is going to be exhausting, having to edit every video twice over and take out every single remotely controversial word. It's going to be exhausting and it's going to be hard work, but I am so glad that I have you guys as a reason to do it, because it means that someone is going to hear these stories the way they ought to be told, and that means everything to me. So thank you so much. So anyway, me and my glasses are going to shut up and leave you with the next chapter now. It is called Babybat, and it is about me as the most embarrassing, cringy, cliched little teen witch in the world. So my cauldron candle I had burning while I was reading it out to set the scene. And yeah, so high school drama and my first outings to goth clubs and how it felt to be a cringy little Babybat in the 90s, because it is so funny to me, dude, that young people think people in the 90s going out as teenagers, oh, it was so cool, everyone was so cool then. No, we weren't. So let me drag you along and show you just how cringy we really were in the 90s. So without further ado, this chapter is called Babybat. So this is me and my glasses saying goodbye and leaving you with the chapter. Bye-bye. Swoosh.
Babybat. The one thing the internet had back in the 90s and doesn't have today, the one thing that could rebirth the decaying goth scene in one fell swoop, is not cheaper gothic clothing or an astounding new goth band to drive us all crazy, or even a ban on social media to drive people screaming from the newfound boredom of their houses. No, it's one simple but brilliant website, NetGoth. If NetGoth was still alive and kicking today, and they did try to bring it back a few years ago, but no one seemed to want to sweep away the nostalgia of its frozen-in-time format, thus the attempt utterly failed. It is, however, still live, with so many profiles trapped in time, frozen circa the year 2004. So many friends gone, changed, or dead. And my own Babybat face preserved in perpetuity, the shot taken at one of my first and most awkward modelling gigs. NetGoth exists now as nothing more than a beautiful tombstone to a better time. But if NetGoth was still functional, I wholly believe the goth scene would see a vast resurgence of life, certainly a gushing influx of the young teen fresh blood that makes any scene truly a scene. It's ironic as all hell, the way the elder goth generation are worshipped for having been there with their, I guess, DIY tips and story times and blurry old photos, all the kids wishing they'd been born back then too, with a head full of memories. But the thing is, that's all they are. They're memories. We're all old as fuck and busted up now, jaded and sagging and tedious. It's you guys, the young ones. You're the ones we want at our clubs and gigs and parties. Don't fear being a Babybat, being awkward and underinformed and new at this. That's the whole goddamn point of it, isn't it? That's the whole beauty of it. The real reason those nights in the 90s and early 2000s were so beautiful is that we were young. We'd never seen any of it before, never been anywhere like a nightclub or a party. Didn't I just tell you about my wildest night ever? And all it took was a few teenagers in dirty jodhpurs, a cassette player and a cigarette? See? That right there, that's the magic of youth. It wasn't a cooler time back then. We just make it sound that way because we were still young and open and new, when, in all honesty, we could have been hanging out in a cesspit or in someone's grandma's bathroom with a stick of incense and The Cure playing, and it still would have been the coolest thing ever, the wildest night. And there's the magic that you still possess, little fetus, and we can never ever get back. Not without you. Not unless we see it through you. Your eyes are fresh and sparkling, your still developing brain is full of magic, and everything is new to you. That's why, if you ever meet an elder goth who isn't a jumped-up lecturing windbag, they will want you at their club, at their party. They won't grill you on goth bands or sneer at your imperfect Deathhawk. They'll snatch you up and kidnap you and never ever let you go. Because all we want from goth clubs now, is young blood with its new magic to lend us. Young blood still thrilled by the old music that sounds so stale to us now. Striking young faces that we can pretend through a haze of snakebite and clove smoke still mirror our own. Young people with absinthe, poetry and fire in their veins, music and magic and amphetamines spinning through their brain cells. Young people with young bodies to keep the dance floor pounding till 4 a.m, even as we sit on the sidelines and bitch about our joints and our allergies and our heart conditions and all the rest of the fun stuff that happens to you so prematurely when you lived fast but somehow didn't actually die young. We want you there. And if Net Goth was still around, you can bet your ass you'd be there. Wherever you lived, anywhere in the world, you'd know where there was. You'd find your place, then you'd find your tribe, and the scene would blossom in greater dark beauty than ever before. Listen, this is how it was in the year 2000. By the time I was 15, I'd popped my gig and goth club cherries, courtesy of my older brother Dan. My first ever gig was Cradle of Filth, Manchester, followed by the Crazy House Rock Club in Liverpool, and then Marilyn Manson's Guns, God and Government tour at the Birmingham NEC. The latter was packed out with socially awkward spooky kids, as Manson's fans dubbed themselves back then, wearing oversized trip pants, baggy fishnets thrown over Manson tees, black eyeliner smudged around eyes and lips alike. It was one of the first places I ever caught boys eyeing me up. A weird new rush. I was the bullied kid, a goddamn untouchable. The idea that anyone would ever want to hold my hand was laughable, disgusting, vomit-inducing, let alone someone openly admitting they fancied me for anything other than a cruel prank. To this day, I strongly advise you never to pull the, hey, my mate really fancies you bit on anyone who was ever bullied. A lifetime of nightmares will induce them to believe you're nothing more than another bully, and your starry-eyed mate fawning in the corner will be shot through the heart with a 1,000-yard stare of absolute loathing. But there it was, the boy in the seat in front as the lights went down and Marilyn Manson strode out onto the stage. This kid's hair tweaked and twiddled into those messy 90s Liberty spikes all over his head, a Manson tour shirt proudly displaying the last time he'd been to a show, with a loose fishnet thrown over it. He kept glancing back at me, shyly, awkwardly, with coal-smudged eyes, sizing things up, working out how to make his move. But he never did. I was sitting with my brother, who was tall, thin, with long black hair, silver earrings and a leather jacket. 10 years older than either me or the boy in front. He probably looked like my rebellious older boyfriend, or so I told myself. It was certainly cooler than being babysat by your big bro because you didn't have any goth friends yet. Going out with my brother was awesome, but the age gap soon chafed. I wanted to get in the mosh pit. He wanted to stand at the back and quietly nod along to the music. I wanted to dance, but not before the eyes of someone who'd watched me cover myself in Superman body paint as a 4-year-old. So, in lieu of actual goth friends to go out with, and in spite of being 3 years illegal to even be in such a place, I started heading out to goth clubs all on my own. The obvious question here, now, in today's world, is how the hell did I know where to go? When you have no friends, how the fuck do you know where the cool places are? Everything is word of mouth now. No goth friends means no goth info, and that means no goth club. But that's where NetGoth came in. NetGoth was a worldwide map of goth, I shit you not. You just found your country, then you zoomed in on your local area, and there it all was, laid out before your eager Babybat eyes, a live dictionary of everything cool to do and every cool person doing it. Club nights were listed with locations, dates, and all pertinent info on dress code, etc., ranging from goth to industrial to rock to fetish. Shops were listed, pubs were listed, and you could register a profile too, telling everyone your favourite hangout, what you like to drink, and what you like to listen to. What else was there? What else mattered? So that was all I did. I went to NetGoth, I found a club night, and then I headed out, alone, into the neon and darkness. The city was around 15 miles away from my shithole hometown, but that was okay. My parents were more than happy to let me go. After I reeled off a wholly fictitious list of the invisible friends I was going to meet there, carefully memorising my fake friends' nomenclatures for next time. Some of them were real, admittedly. I'd met/ineptly seduced a guy at a Sisters of Mercy gig who liked to get in some underage groping down dark corners of a rock club called XL's. Chris was 21 years old to my 15, a spiky-haired, chisel-cheekboned punk in a leather jacket with Brummy Bolshevik scrawled in Tipex on the back, amongst a multitude of other sayings and lyrics that were political and cool and largely incomprehensible to me, which just made them all the cooler. He tasted of carling and cigarettes, and I thought he was the hottest thing on earth. Even if he kissed like he was trying to gag you with his tongue, and had absolutely zero knowledge of female genital anatomy, much as he liked to try, no matter who was looking. I'd never had anyone's hand down my pants before, but just like everything else relating to sex, I wanted my virginity, my naivety, gone without a word. So I pretended it was the 69 millionth time a drunk punk had shoved his hand up my skirt, then fumbled around haplessly for the clit. I didn't enjoy it, to be honest. It felt sort of like a weird medical examination, but sex was cool, and virginity was lame. So the more we did, the better. And anyway, what mattered about Chris, beyond his perfect face, was that he could talk politics, making him immediate pussy bait to any naive teenage Mannix fan. And so, in the dark, smoky corners of XL's, Chris talked, and I listened, wide-eyed. And then he'd look into my eyes like he was smouldering a hole through my soul. And then we'd grope away for a bit. I still remember his impossibly cute habit of ending every violent snog with a delicate, closed-lip kiss on the lips, like a little stamp of ownership. Yeah, he was hot. I actually met him again about a decade later, and we repeated it all for old time's sake. He still hadn't learned how to kiss without the aggressive tonguing, but I was high on ecstasy and feeling nostalgic, so I went with it. Once the pills wore off, though, the next day, I didn't take his call. Nonetheless, I truly hope he isn't bald by now, 15 years later. It'd be a fucking tragedy, that gorgeous brown-haired Billy Idol. I hope you're all good, Chris, wherever you are. Whatever's scribbled on the back of your jacket now. God, I hope you didn't become an accountant or a Tory. But that's getting well ahead of myself. Like I was saying, not all my friends were imaginary. Chris existed, but Chris was a boy, and a 21-year-old boy at that. So when persuading my mum to let me go to clubs, I had to bury his name in a sea of fake females. There was Gemma and Anna and Kate and Lisa. Oh, and Chris, yeah, they're the ones I'm meeting. Yeah, they're my age, a little older maybe, who knows, it's fine, they'll look after me. So she let me go. And when your kid is female, you can't just abandon them to the creepy night bus. So my wonderful, if reckless parents not only let me go, but drove me both ways, there and back again, my fantastically unobservant stepdad never seeming to notice that I always emerged from XL's, yanking my skirt back down and zipping my top back up and wiping black lipstick smudges from all over my face. Anyway, pretty soon after, I ditched Chris. He was unreliable, he refused to dance, and worst of all, he was too fucking cheap to get us a taxi back to his place so I could fuck him and toss away my unwanted virginity. His usefulness to me was utterly spent, and in lieu of other options, well, it was time to go it alone. So, one of the first clubs I went to solo at 15 years old, somehow I never got turned away at the door. I had no fake ID, but at goth clubs, they never seemed to give a shit about IDing anyone anyway. So my first solo mission ever, it was to Death Machine, at the echoing underground venue of Subway City, and I believe it was the final closing night of Death Machine that I visited, which was a stroke of nearly obscene luck. NetGoth was a buzzing resource, undeniably, but club nights opened and closed with the winds of fate, and had I gone just 1 week later, I would have shown up to a dead venue, or worse still, walked in, alone, 15, gothed up to the nines, only to find a new night running that was totally mainstream. Immediately followed by most likely having the shit kicked out of me. But I didn't. I got lucky. The club was in full swing. Death Machine was a sparse underground concrete cellar of a venue, all smoke machines and lurid blacklight, hard cybergoth beats thumping away in the main room. The real goth stuff was lurking in the back, in a gloomy little hole with tall bar stools and an abandoned dance floor. For even in the year 2000, trad goth was falling out of fashion. The nights that did best were a swirling gumbo of cyber, industrial and trad, appealing to young and old, goths, metalers and cybers alike. Though it is worth noting that cybergoth meant something very different back then. It wasn't the staticky, white noise, hyperspeed racket of today. It still had tunes and lyrics and vocalists. VMV Nation and Covenant were, at that time, believe it or not, considered dirty cyber bands. But the goth room at Death Machine was rigidly sticking to its guns. All night they spun nothing but trad, and I loved it, not knowing that this was precisely the reason the room was abandoned bar a distant guy slumped morosely against the wall, and the club was wheezing its last rattling breath. But to me, then, it didn't even matter that no one was there. People. I was out. I was at a goth club on my own, with no bullies to pick on me, no Chris to whinge about dancing or insist on fingering me in the middle of the rock room, no brother to make me feel young and naive and awkward, and they were playing Bela Lugosi's Dead and the Sisters of Mercy, and I danced and danced all by myself on the narrow spotlit dance floor, partly because it felt good, but mostly because, and here's the secret to all of this bravery, my little fetus, no one can tell you're alone when you're dancing. This was the year 2000. I had a mobile phone of sorts, but there was no form of entertainment on it. You couldn't hide behind a screen, flicking through Instagram for hours at a club. You had to be present, fully, always, and that meant if you went out alone, the very second you stood still, you looked it. Alone. Awkward, bored, a lame little killjoy without a friend in the world. I think this is why I've never understood people who are scared of dancing at clubs. Where I come from, when I come from, it was much scarier to stand still. Soon after this demi-successful Death Machine expedition, I began going out to clubs across the West Midlands with my first... partner in crime would be a vast exaggeration, but I'd finally found a school friend who was also into the alternative scene. Seemingly via Buffy the Vampire Slayer, judging by his stylistics, which resembled a mating of Spike and Angel. His hair was brown and perfectly spiky. He wore deep red shirts with long pointed vampiric collars, a lot of heavy silver jewellery, and always a black leather trench coat. I had a crush on him long before he asked me out. He was the hot one, amidst a pack of acne-riddled, profoundly awkward teenage boys, one of whom had already put the moves on me. I'd shut him down, but somehow this guy had regardless edged his way into the friend zone, and I used the term friend very, very loosely for reasons we will get to soon. So there he was, my new clubbing buddy. Not that guy, but this guy, the hot one, Jason, as we will call him, a fake name for a character still drifting around the edges of my life. He was the hot one, and finally he asked me out. It was cool as anything. For about 5 minutes. But it rapidly became clear that I didn't really know what to do with him. And the feeling was mutual. Two socially awkward teenage goths doth not a smooth partnership make. Everything had been so much easier with Chris and his years of experience, his absolute lack of hesitation when it came to slipping a finger anywhere he liked, let alone kicking off a simple make-out session. But with Jason, our relationship largely consisted of walking long, slow laps around our shithole hometown in the hours long after dark, him in his leather trench coat, me in my swooping crushed velvet, the silver claw ring on my index finger, growing colder and colder and icier as the night air seeped into the metal and froze my flesh along with it. I don't remember now what we talked about, but it was always so beautiful to be out in the moonlight. But where could we possibly go in this shithole, to be alone, to do the things that mattered? Hell, the only thing that mattered. Throwing away the obscene freaking virginity that hung like Marley's chains around my neck. Neither of our parental sets would let us be alone together in our bedrooms, so we just walked and walked beneath the moon, two hefty pairs of metal-plated New Rock boots clunking along side by side. I recall being bizarrely flattered, the time Jason was so bewitched, staring into my eyes, that he walked directly into a lamppost. That sort of thing didn't happen to the bullied kid. The next day, I would discover, through the overly eager reportings of the third and final goth in school, Layla, as we will call her, that Jason had described me as darkly beautiful. This was the sort of thing you said in the year 2000 as a goth in high school. Other choice phrases involved spitting the words "foolish mortal" at your bullies, or dancing down the road from school, arm in arm with Layla, howling gleefully, "The threefold law's gonna get you, the threefold law's gonna get you," which likely meant nothing at all to the bullies in question, and even more unfortunately, my infant witch spells to invoke their bad karma and the threefold law, then send that noxious energy soaring back towards those little assholes like a reeking ton of bad juju dog shit by the power of 3 times 3, so mote it be, all proved utterly futile. I wanted to turn up at school and discover them covered in boils, or to hear that they'd been run over, or at the very least broken a bone, or caught genital warts while shagging their equally unpleasant girlfriends in the bushes of the local park, but it never ever happened. I always wanted to be a powerful, spooky witch, but I was never any good at it. Even if my current lifestyle, in the year 2021, and the otherworldly creatures who have become a huge and beautiful part of my life would blow my teenage self's mind to bits. But there I go again, getting way, way ahead of myself. In truth, the trouble with dating Jason was that it was the first time I began to realise that I was grey sexual. Or, to put it in the considerably less enlightened words of the year 2000, I was picky as shit. I fancied him from afar, but up close, he was somehow too real. Too teenage, too awkward, lacking the older guy flair, force and eloquence of Chris. On the final night that we walked for hours, we finally stopped outside my front door, and it was clear that this was the moment. The expectation of our first kiss. We hesitated, then hesitated some more, said an awkward goodbye, paused, said it again. The street light shone sepia above our heads, throwing his red and black aesthetic into moody monochrome. A cat stalked through the darkness, and then the world grew still, silent as the grave. Everything on earth holding its breath as it waited for us to just get it over with and kiss already. So I took a step towards him. He was rather taller than I expected. This wasn't going as planned. At the very last moment, something went completely wrong inside my brain, and somehow, instead of standing on my tiptoes, reaching out to brush my fingertips across his cheekbone and into that perfectly spiked hair, then taking his breath away, I sidestepped, gave him the worst, most awkward species of matey semi-hug, yanked myself away, blurted out an utterly infantile "bye-bye," and rocketed in through my front door, cringing from the tips of my crimped hair right down to my fucking anus. Our first kiss was the worst bust ever. There just wasn't any chemistry, not at all, and I was far, far too inexperienced to know how to fake something I'd never even felt. And this realization was what caused me to make the epic mistake of confiding in our friend-zoned hero, Stuart, whose real name we are using in retribution for his sleazy dickheadery. Pro tip: don't fuck over an Aries. We hold grudges for centuries. So here we go. Stuart phoned me that night on the pretense of asking how I was feeling about everything. Dating Jason, how it was going, that kind of thing. It sounded, to a naive, autistic idiot like me, like just the sort of friendly phone call a person needed when they were struggling with all the problems that came with bagging the hot guy, hell, bagging the only male goth in school who also happened to be a hot guy, but then realising that the closer you got, the more you cringed away from him, and you didn't even know why, but you thought it was probably a sign you needed to break it off and go back to dating older guys like Chris, but you didn't have the first clue how to tell Jason that, so what the fuck should you do? I poured out all these cliché teenage woes to my good buddy Stu, who led with question after question, lending the most sympathetic of listening ears, until the next day at school, when it turned out that that spotty, jealous, friend-zoned little tosser was still so bitter about the whole affair, him asking me out, his hot friend getting me instead. Christ, I should have seen it coming, even young as I was. Jason had given me the verbatim quote on one of our midnight walks that Stuart had declared how much he wanted to... what was it? Shag me 6 ways to Sunday? Fuck me into next week? Something along those lines. Apparently Stu not only thought his virginal sexual prowess was up to such a feat, but also considered it an acceptable thing to say to his mate about his mate's girlfriend, who had previously friend-zoned him. As such, when that mate's girlfriend got cold feet, Stu also found it perfectly acceptable to do this. My words had been twisted into fucking pretzels overnight. Not only was I thinking about Chris, alluding to Chris, I was fucking Chris. Behind Jason's back. I was mocking everything about him, and after that, well, the breakup happened without either of us needing to say a word, because good old Stu was there to facilitate an utter swaggering clusterfuck. I literally wonder whether that kid was a sociopath or simply an incel before there was a word for it. But regardless of his dickhole behaviour, Jason and I were really the only goths in school, and that meant, breakup or no, we were still going to hang out. And so it was that Jason, for a time, became my legitimate, living, breathing, non-fictional, goth clubbing friend. Even if, again, the word friend is used somewhat loosely. Not because Jason was a Stuart-shaped arsehole, but because he was a baffling Jason-shaped vacuum. On one occasion, we went out to a rock club in Wolverhampton, which was a shithole even shittier than ours, but had more going on. And when I went to the bar to get my vodka and coke, Jason told me that he wasn't having anything besides water. I asked why, making sure he knew that booze money wasn't an issue. I had the cash. My parents didn't just provide lifts to these clubs that we were illegal to go to, they provided money too, in case I ever needed anything. Fuck only knows what a teenager with a pre-arranged lift home would need in a nightclub besides booze or drugs, but there we go. I was well funded in my mischief. However, when I offered Jason this chance for a sneaky underage drink or 3 in this venue designed for drunken wild times amidst all these other kids getting drunk and headbanging, Jason flatly stated that he did not drink, and he would not drink because when he was older, he wanted to be a policeman, and clearly drinking underage was illegal. I stared at him, head tilted, and wondered, do you seriously think the SWAT team's about to bust down the door, snatch the voddy out of your hand, send you down to juvie, and write on your permanent record, "Never let this kid be a copper," all over one pissy little drink in a place designed for drinking? What's wrong with you? It blew my mind. It was an alien concept. These days, regarding Jason's legal ambitions, I mostly think, thank God I had already dumped you, because your ambition was to follow the rule of law so strictly you enforced it, while, awkwardly enough, my own major life ambition at that age was, sorry to say it, Mum, but to try intravenous heroin. It wasn't exactly a match made in heaven or even a match made in a crack den. So, inside the rundown gloom of that shitty small-town nightclub, I got a bit buzzed while Jason sipped away at his water and stared into space, saying absolutely nothing for the entire 2 hours we were there. All I saw was someone who was of no use to me whatsoever. Going out clubbing was a quest for new experiences, wasn't it? New people, danger and strangers and moonlight and corruption, drugs and sex and all the forbidden things under the sun. And this guy, he didn't even want those fucking things. What the fucking fuck? What was I meant to do with him? Even more weirdly, in spite of having spent the whole night sipping tepid water and silently watching other people dance, Jason still seemed keen on coming out with me to nightclubs. And thus it was that a week or two later, we headed out to Edward's number 8 for the very first time. The club that was to be the most seminal influence in my life, right up to the present day. I would meet all 3 of my long-term partners in its foggy, blacklit depths, have whirling, spinning, indescribable, ecstasy-wreathed neon midnights, and, on one occasion, witnessed the entire building burning to ash. Getting ready took a while back then, with the basic technology of the time. My crimpers took 15 fucking minutes to heat up to usable temperature, and even then they remained so profoundly lukewarm you had to hold them down on each hair strand while counting slowly down from 10 to 0, then moving down the strand and repeating that process. Each chunk of hair took minutes, and I've always had pretty thick hair. My makeup was shoddy, rapid back then. What else was there before makeup tutorials? But my hair took most of an hour, and that was plenty of time for the butterflies in my stomach to morph into swooping vultures of anxiety. While I crimped away, sitting on a beanbag in the corner opposite my vast mirror, the mirror that has, just like the mirror in Sylvia Plath's poem, swallowed my child self down into its mysterious silver depths, then gulped away 1,000 early pagan rituals, devoured the reflection of my ecstasy-dilated pupils, my heroin-pinned eyes, and is now licking away at my first wrinkles, waiting for the day that an old woman will rise like some hideous fish from its depths. That mirror has seen it all, and more, but in the year 2001, the mirror was every bit as much of a naive baby as I was. I crimped away, the anxiety vultures flapping in my stomach, and as always, to combat them, I listened to Hole, Live Through This. The first time I heard of Hole, I didn't know if I was allowed to like them, because, didn't she, murder him? Fuck forbid you appreciate the woman he loved and let the poor bastard rest in peace, when instead you could fall for that juicy, demented, grunge, misogynist conspiracy theory and pretend that Kurt's endless overdoses, addictions, chronic pain and suicidal ideation were really a young man in the prime of mental and physical health, cut down by a crazed blonde psycho bitch. It was, and still is, a tough conspiracy to ignore, surrounded by the drama of teenage life. But once I heard Celebrity Skin on the radio, heard Courtney's voice, the rawness of Courtney's balls out, beautiful, impossible fucking voice, she won me over, utterly and forever, and I bought Live Through This. She then became the sole woman I looked up to in a male-dominated scene, the only role model I had when it came to being a sexy, badass bitch on the alternative scene. And that meant whenever the anxiety vultures flapped in my stomach at the thought of going out into the night, trying to be cool, it was Courtney I listened to every single time. Courtney's screams about amethyst skies, stars swimming through the night like little fish. These were the words I crimped my hair to, smudged my eyeliner to, covering my lips in black eyeliner in lieu of actual black lipstick, then pulled on swathes of crushed black velvet that fell to the floor, followed by my stompy New Rock boots, another layer of crushed velvet, a squirt or five of Emily Strange black rose perfume in its coffin-shaped bottle, adorned with a single black plastic rose, until finally I admired the goth queen. Or, more accurately, the haphazardly put together little squirt in the mirror, paused in front of the CD player, absorbed the last dregs of Courtney's magic, and silenced her. Then out into the night I went. Going to goth clubs has never stopped giving me butterflies. Even 20 years later, I still believe in magic, in the possibility that some beautiful, maybe even inhuman, stranger could be lurking amidst the fog and blacklight, ready to change my life forevermore. And if I can't go to goth clubs, or if I do go and it's dull, and there's nobody beautiful or new or fascinating, I write stories instead, blurring real places and fictional heroes until I can convince myself that they really exist, that they're really out there. And the next time I go, I might even meet them. I've been writing that story for the past 9 years, and I'm still getting it right. But who cares when it's as addictive as all hell? Spinning life into what it ought to be, losing yourself in the astral realm of your own idealized neon midnight. Vampires and clubs and music and drugs and magic, all in a flourish of flying fingers and glowing curses, spewing out a strange dark witchery that seems to spin itself more from the ether than from your own brain. But whatever the tactics, writing, vlogging, imagining, goth clubs have never, even now, become so mundane that the nervous shivers disappear. So, if you're done fastening all 8 buckles on your boots, and you've remembered your perfume, your eyeliner, your white Stargazer pancake makeup, and enough cash for a couple of drinks, then I guess we're ready to go. To clamber into that oversized orange car, pick up Jason, and trundle through the night, through the year 2001, towards the lights of the city, down the drunken chaos of Broad Street, and up the twisting, turning John Bright Street, where a flight of black stairs swirled with surreal graffiti leads us on to destiny. Are you ready yet? Are you coming out tonight? And that's the end of this chapter. But given the next chapter flows on directly from here and is where the fun really begins, I'm going to give you that too in 2 days' time. Unless you're a Patreon person, in which case, boom, I'm giving you them both tonight, and you can just binge watch if you feel like it, or you can watch the next one at your leisure. So if you are seeing this video right now on YouTube, then you can click the link in the description box for my Patreon, and you can go and see part 2 now for the princely sum of $2 plus a few pennies of sales tax. It varies depending on where you live, but it's basically $2. Basically $2. if you want to hear the rest of it now and get a head start on any future chapters that come out and end up being pairs like this that are kind of awkward to split. But equally, if you're seeing this after 2 days after it was uploaded, then I will link the next chapter down in the comments and pin that comment. So if you're late to this video, you can also go and binge watch for free. So the next chapter is called Edward's Number 8, and it takes us to the club that, yeah, would change my life forever. So anyway, I will let you pick your options. You may pop off to Patreon, or you may wait 2 days, or if you're late to the video, scroll down and the link will be in the comments. And as I said last time, if you enjoyed this, I do have a book of short stories out called The Putrescent Vein on Amazon. There's always a link down in the drop down. However, that is the link to the American Amazon. So if you're anywhere other than America, just go to your local Amazon and search for The Putrescent Vein, and that's my book of short stories. Also, yes, there was the first chapter of this nostalgia project, which I will link down in the drop down if you want to go back and hear about supremely awkward 13-year-old pre-goth me and the wildest night of my life. That one is also out. And anyway, I will hopefully see you in the next chapter. If you want to come out clubbing with me in 2001, are you ready? If you've got all your 8 buckles done up and you're ready to go, then come with me on a journey through time and space to the next chapter. Anyway, this is long. I'm going to shut up. So see you in the next chapter, I hope. Bye-bye.